Hello guys, welcome to my Understanding ECG series, and in this video we will talk about the axis of ECG. First of all, what is an axis of ECG? Axis is nothing but the sum of all the currents that are traveling to the heart, that is right atrial or left atrial depolarizations, septal currents, right ventricles, left ventricle currents. If we add all these currents, then it will become the axis of the ECG. The normal axis of the ECG lies between minus 30 degrees to plus 100 degrees. The reason behind this is as most of the currents are passing through the left ventricle and left ventricle lies in this region, so the axis will automatically turns towards this region, that is minus 30 to plus 100. If the axis is between minus 30 to minus 90, it is deviate to the left side, or it is called as left axis deviation. Why the axis is deviated to the left axis means if the left ventricle is hypertrophied or if the right ventricle is thinner, then the net current will be passing towards the left side, right? So the axis will be left axis deviated, that is between minus 30 to minus 90 degrees. And if RV is thicker and LV is thinner, the axis will turn towards right side. It is called as right axis deviation, and it is between plus 100 degrees to plus 180 degrees. Minus 30 to minus 90 is left axis deviation, plus 100 to plus 180 is right axis deviation. Now let us see how to calculate this axis. For this you have to keep two things in your mind. You have to see at least waves of 3 leads, that is lead 1, lead 2 and lead AVF, to narrow down the axis. And if the QRS complexes in these leads are positive or deflected towards the upper side, then you have to shade the adjacent area, and if the QRS complexes are majorly negative, you have to shade the opposite area. Let us understand this with an example. Before calculating the axis, first you have to draw a circle like this and you have to label all these things. Axis of lead 1 is this thing, right? So you have to draw a perpendicular line like this which shades the waves of the axis or of lead 1. Axis of lead AVF is this thing, right? So you have to draw a perpendicular line to lead AVF. And finally axis of lead 2 is this thing, right? So you have to draw a perpendicular line like this. See, first you have to see all these things and how the QRS complexes are there in these leads. In lead 1 the QRS complex is positive, so you have to shade the adjacent side to the lead 1. This is the adjacent side to the lead 1, so you have to start shading this area. If you use only one lead, your axis will be minus 90 to plus 90. You cannot narrow down your axis. So to narrow down your axis, you will use multiple leads. You have to use at least 3 leads to narrow down the axis. Then you will see lead AVF. In lead AVF also, the QRS is positive. In lead AVF, you have to shade this area. Here the QRS is positive, so you have to start shading this area. And finally you will come to lead 2. In lead 2 also QRS is positive. This is lead 2. If the QRS positive is, if the QRS complex is positive, you have to shade this area. So you will start shading this area. Now what is common in between these three axes is this area. So the axis of the ECG lies in this part, that is 0 to 90 degrees. If the axis is between 0 to 90 degrees, then it is normal. Minus 30 to minus 90 is normal. Now let me give you one more example. Imagine all these three waves are negative. How to calculate the axis? First of all, you have to draw a circle. Then draw perpendicular lines to all these three leads. This is perpendicular line to lead AVF. This is perpendicular line to lead 1. And this is perpendicular line to lead 2. This is 0 degrees, minus 30 degrees, 90 degrees, minus 90 degrees, 180 degrees. First see lead 1. Lead 1 is negative, so you have to shade the opposite area. Lead AVF, it is also negative, so you have to shade the opposite area to AVF. Next lead 2. Lead 2 is also negative, so you have to shade the opposite area to lead 2. So we'll start shading this area. So what is common for all these three axes here is this thing, that is minus 90 to minus 180 degrees. So the axis lies in the northwest axis or extreme right axis. Now take a paper and try to calculate the axis of this combination. From this I hope everybody understood how to calculate the axis of an ECG, what is left axis deviation and what is right axis deviation. Thank you.